Alright, so this video will be entitled Why a Resource-Based Economy is the Only Way to Go, and I'll be reading this verbatim from my notes just now. In a resource-based economy, there would be no such thing as alienation. People would operate within what Watts called the mystical state of consciousness, which could also be called, in his words, environmentalism. Resources would be employed, not bought, for there is no reason that your work in one area should entitle you to the use of ample resources any more so than anyone else. One project would only be relevant to another insofar as there would be material relevance, not the abstract sense created by monetarism. The only reason why our system is so corrupt is that, for instance, I can work a job that is entirely unrelated to another project, collect money, an abstraction, and begin work on the second project. This is why Deleuze said that capitalism breeds schizophrenia. The two projects are entirely unrelated, and so I never think in a larger context. There is no Hegelian synthesis of projects based on the same sort of internal necessity that any one of these projects depends upon. Heidegger would have put it in the way he conceptualized art. The artist and the artwork create each other, but the origin of both is art itself. So it is that the synthesis of separate projects, each conceived out of a sovereign necessity, would in itself be the product of a greater necessity. All creative work arises from such a synthesis. The very process of undertaking a single project is a synthesis of this kind, so it follows that super projects would follow the same incentives. A resource-based economy would entirely transform human consciousness and how we conceptualize production. We would see an alchemical wedding of Taoistic naturalism and industrialism. No more would the individual be valued for one's monetary worth, regardless of the origins of that abstract illusion of wealth. Everyone would be equally entitled to material wealth, and division between people in the form of paranoid hostility would disappear as more and more super projects and ultimately ultra projects would enter into synthesis, and the lines between one individual's interests and another's would blur and finally vanish. All education should lead to this as a logical conclusion, for the growth of the mind simply stops when one turns away from the natural impulse to create a comprehensive homeostasis on this planet and towards the paranoid schizophrenic delusion of the individual with monetary wealth and private interests. There is never a reason for miserliness where the outcome of one's contribution is known to reciprocally reinforce one's self. It would be mad to think that an individual could operate in an entirely parasitic way, but if this is possible, the system that enables and encourages such behavior must be put to an end, beginning with the entirely deluded sense that one has to work in order to gain access to resources. The obverse must be true. Gaining access must precede work, for one needs resources to work. We have simply to invert our common sense so that it accords with material reality. Never be afraid to ask for the opportunity.